Hello everyone, welcome back. My name is Arias, and today we're going to be talking about Recursion Pharmaceuticals Q4 and full year 2021 results, along with the shareholder letter from CEO Chris Gibson, which is chock full of great insights. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoy this type of content, and leave any video suggestions and feedback in the comments below. And without further ado, let's get into it. First up are my takeaways from the business update for Q4 and the full year 2021. The biggest highlight here is the clear updates they have given on when phase 2 trials will begin for much of their pipeline. Up to this point, most guidance they had given said that they were looking to initiate trials before the end of 2022, but now we have much more concrete guidance. In March, they enrolled their first patients in phase 2 trial for cerebral cavernous malformation, or CCM. While this is their first phase 2 trial, they are planning to initiate many more in quick succession. They plan to initiate a phase 2-3 trial for neurofibromatosis type 2 in Q2, as well as a phase 2 trial for FAP in Q4, with a trial for C. diff colitis somewhere in the back half of 2022. FAP just received Fast Track designation for the FDA, which means that they may be able to get the trial going sooner than was expected in this release. As you can see, they have a very aggressive schedule for this year, getting into phase 2 trials for such a young company. They ended the year with $570 million in cash and equivalents, but spent in the year $135 million on research and development and $57.7 million on general administrative, which totaled up to a loss of $187 million for the year. This will give them about 2.75 years of runway at the current burn rate. However, I would expect this run rate to ramp significantly as they invest more in larger, more expensive, later stage clinical trials. This realization brings about the definite possibility of not having a drug in the market by the time they would run out of cash. I would expect them to continue to acquire funds by partnering with large pharmaceutical companies who could provide cash injections to keep them solvent long enough to get drugs into the market and become self-funding, and only dilute shareholders if absolutely necessary or if the valuation makes a dramatic turn upward. Now let's move on to the meat of the video, the shareholder letter from CEO Chris Gibson at the beginning of their most recent 10K, where I will just go through and highlight the things I thought were most important. I highly suggest reading the whole letter on your own, and it will be linked clearly in the description. He started out by saying he believes candor with investors is important to them achieving their mission long term. This is music to my ears. However, it has to be backed up over the coming years, and he has to actually share what he thinks will be challenges going forward and how he's going to navigate them. Every public company says they will be honest with shareholders, but not all are. However, I think Chris is being real here, and we just have to watch this going forward. He then moved on to talk about the 3 key theses of Recursion. First, images and computers have given rise to a scalable, less expensive, new data set named phenomics. Second, phenomics would be useful in determining how biology worked. And third, if 1 and 2 are true, then phenology can be used to build maps of biology to discover new medicines quicker, cheaper, and with less bias, streamlining the process of drug discovery. These 3 make up the key theses of Recursion, and in my opinion, if proven out, would make the company extremely valuable. The first 2 are essentially proven, in my opinion, leaving the third, which is the key to much of the value. The first and strongest evidence of the third thesis thus far was when in late 2020 they started to run experiments from their first maps of biology. Some of these experiments failed while others were successful, many more than would have been randomly successful, which is their first indication that the massive scale and techniques that they have built at Recursion could be used to streamline the drug discovery process rather than having to rely just on the massive scale as a screening apparatus. This was a key moment for the company, as this changed their whole strategy. They moved away from the method they had used up to this point, their brute force search method, and to the MAPS method for navigating biology. They have derived many more new potential programs from this latter approach than the brute force approach in a much shorter period of time. These will first be used to expand their in-house pipeline. However, with the abundance of programs that the mapping method is able to throw off, they will of course look to partnerships as well. One of these partners that they have already indicated is Bayer, who was first a partner just using the brute force method, and later added knowledge and targets from using the MAPS method as well. There was another line that was particularly interesting from this section with Bayer, and that was when Chris said, "We are excited to be well on our way to mapping Bayer's compound library and identifying MAPS-based relationships that we think will be of interest to our colleagues there." This could be nothing, and I'm just reading too much into it, and they could just be speaking of relationships that are already in their agreement, or this could mean Recursion has already been working as a lead development creator, but we will discuss this more later as well. He also said that they would continue to pursue a limited number of partnerships going forward, but they would not be in a rush. It would only ink deals that are beneficial to them and would provide extra knowledge or expertise or resources to help them bring more drugs to market sooner. The next topic was the rapid expansion that occurred in 2021. Approximately a year ago, in April of 2021, they IPO'd and raised about $500 million in the process. In the same year, they doubled their team size to over 400. And their clinical development team especially grew quickly to over 30 at the end of 21 from 4 at the start of that year. They also continued to scale the number of experiments done, which nearly doubled, as well as the predicted relationships, which increased an astonishing 15x in the year. To continue the scaling, they have announced the opening of new facilities in Montreal and Toronto, as well as the expansion of the Utah facilities, which will include what they intriguingly described as analytical chemistry facilities and automated microsynthesis. Moving on, they talked about some of the challenges of 2021. First off, while this didn't happen in 2021, was the delay of their GM2 gangliosidosis Phase 2 trial to explore the correct dosing regimen, which could delay the Phase 2 trial by up to 2 years. The choice to do so was driven by noisiness in the potency of the candidate, and that the planned dose may not have been efficacious for certain patients. And while this is common for a new treatment, because infants were going to be dosed, they decided to be conservative and ensure that they had done everything that they can to maximize the confidence in selecting the correct dose. Gibson expressed confidence in this treatment in the long term, and I share this view. I think it's smart to take a step back and ensure the correct choice is made. However, I would start to be worried if every program needed to take a step back to optimize dosing. This would indicate that there is either a problem with Recursion's platform or that the management is not sufficiently competent to bring drugs to market in a timely manner. Just to be clear, I don't think either of these are true, but just something to watch for going forward. Another one of their challenges was cultivating the desired work environment despite the rapid introduction of many new team members. The final challenge I will mention is that while he pledged to remain aggressive and opportunistic for long-term growth, Gibson admitted that they did scale back long-term investment cadence in favor of focus on investments in short to mid-term growth in light of the recent market conditions. However, this is not what I'd like to hear. I wish that I could have heard that they are still investing aggressively to maximize the long term, because that's what I'm here for as an investor. However, I have to take a step back and remind myself that I want Recursion to be around long enough to see the future that they can create. Thus, it is important that they take a step back and ensure their capital position remains strong. Finally, before my conclusions, we get to what was the most interesting part of the letter to me, and that was their main 2 goals for next year and further out in the future. First, of course, was the continued development of the Recursion OS. Gibson bragged that they had thus far developed an excellent platform for discovery and hit development. The next steps for improving the platform are combining automated microsynthesis with digital chemistry to create new chemical entities. I found this idea really interesting enough to dive deeper, so here's a quote from Chris about the new capabilities. He said, "Success here would enable us to take hits from our platform, prioritize new chemical entities of interest to improve on key properties, and then, rather than waiting months for synthesis of these compounds from partners, we could synthesize them on-site in small quantities to immediately test back on the platform. This compressed iterative cycle may allow us to advance new chemical entities much more quickly." This is a really interesting idea, and I can't wait to hear more about its development in the future, as it is really the first time he's giving any details on it. He also mentioned that they're expanding their predictive ADMET capabilities. ADMET, or ADMET, stands for absorption, distribution, metabolism, elimination, and toxicity, and these are those preclinical studies that have to be done before any dosing in humans starts. Predictive ADMET would give them the ability to better understand the effects that a candidate would have in humans. If they can improve this understanding, then they can more effectively dump poor candidates and narrow the funnel even quicker, reducing costs and accelerating time to market further. The second thing to think about, and I'd expect this to be defined over the next few years, is deciding what exactly their business model will be. Chris gave 2 paths. First, in no particular order, is becoming a vertically integrated company spanning drug discovery to commercialization. Second, they could become a discovery-focused company who hands off the leads to larger pharma partners, essentially just a research engine. He posited that there will be challenges as well as opportunities with both approaches, but in my opinion, I think it will be most beneficial to use both strategies. On one hand, Recursion probably doesn't currently have enough money to get this aggressive pipeline of drugs to market in time to become self-funding, and thus they need cash from somewhere else. Big Pharma has a lot of cash, and they're always looking for new drug candidates, which Recursion has a lot of. If they can leverage this dynamic to keep dilution to a minimum by creating partnerships in return for some short-term cash and longer-term milestones or royalties, that would be great, both for shareholders because of lack of dilution, and for the world as more treatments could get to the market sooner. On the other hand, if Recursion has the ambition to someday exceed the size of the largest pharma companies out there today, it would stand to reason that they can't do that by selling leads to them, as they're taking part in a small fraction of the value chain. This is why they need to keep their clinical development team activities growing, despite the strain it might place on their cash position short term. Long term, they will need to be seasoned at taking drugs all the way to market to capture the full value chain, and I think they're on the right path to do so thus far, straddling the line with partnerships as well as developing their own clinical pipeline. Finally, my conclusions. To sum it up, Recursion's future still looks very bright as they continue to advance their pipeline, have a healthy cash position, and are scaling rapidly. One of the biggest things to look for going forward is the development of their business model in terms of whether they're going to be partnering off on more programs or continue to build their own clinical pipeline. Another shift to look for is between brute force and predictive search. This is going to be huge for the number of preclinical programs they have in development this year, and we will have to watch the steady march of these programs going forward. Another thing I'll mention is I'm going to be going through the 85-page business section of their 10K on my own. Let me know in the comments if you have interest in a video on the topic, as I will only do it if there's significant interest. Finally, for what I'm doing with Recursion stock, I will continue to add as aggressively as possible. It currently makes up about 2.5% of my total portfolio, but about 10% of my portfolio ex-Tesla. Thanks for watching. What do you think of the developments from their letter, and how should they structure their business model going forward? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks again for watching, and have a great rest of your day.